On the morning of May 20th in the year 1941, precisely at 6:42 a.m., Sergeant Alfred Clive Hulme found himself standing in the stern confines of the Field Punishment Center situated in Platanius, Crete. From his vantage point, he watched as a swarm of German Fallschirmjäger, paratroopers, descended through the dawn sky like a relentless swarm of locusts, darkening the atmosphere as they advanced upon Malm Aerodrome. Sergeant Hulme, at the age of 30, had been serving as a provost for just over 8 months, yet he had yet to record a single kill in combat. In that initial airborne assault, the Germans had deployed around 3,000 paratroopers during the first wave, with more to come, threatening a tide of invasion that seemed unstoppable. At that moment, Hulme was in charge of overseeing 23 soldiers from New Zealand who manned the punishment center. These men had been caught engaged in various infractions, some fighting, others intoxicated while on duty, and a few stealing supplies. The army labeled them as unruly or troublesome, but Hulme understood the truth was more nuanced. To him, they were soldiers, imperfect, yes, but still combatants who had made mistakes under extreme circumstances. Right now, each one of these men was an essential asset. He knew that every available trigger finger could make a difference in the chaos unfolding around them. As the paratroopers descended, some became entangled in their parachutes, falling to the earth wounded or dead before they could even land. Others hit the ground with more grace and swiftly began to establish tactical fighting positions, transforming the landscape into a hostile battleground. The 23rd Battalion had been stationed near Crete for less than a month. Many of its members had never experienced the horrors of direct combat before, and now they found themselves confronted with the largest airborne assault in military history. Without hesitation, Hulme sprinted to the nearby armory, grabbing every rifle he could lay his hands on, those still in workable condition, and hurriedly distributed them among the prisoners. There was no time for bureaucracy or formal procedures, no official paperwork, no official orders. Men accepted the weapons silently, their faces grim with resolve, and followed Hulme as they moved toward the sound of gunfire echoing through the air. By the afternoon of May 20th, Hulme had led his makeshift unit into 3 separate clashes with German positions near the aerodrome. The enemy had brought with them fierce armored fire, mortar rounds screaming through the air, and relentless sniping aimed to disarm and demoralize the defenders. Despite the overwhelming opposition, Hulme and his men pressed forward, clearing small pockets of German paratroopers who had managed to establish themselves in front of the New Zealand defensive line. By day's end, the battlefield was strewn with around 130 German bodies, a grim testament to the fierce fighting that day. Almost immediately, the deadly threat posed by German snipers became evident. These specialized marksmen, using the elusive camouflage of a sniper rifle, had infiltrated the Kiwi positions with deadly precision. Equipped with the distinct and advanced camouflage, they sought out the highest vantage points, systematically targeting officers, radio operators, and anyone deemed a critical asset to the defense. Conventional infantry tactics offered no solution. These snipers were almost invisible, their muzzle flashes obscured by shadows and cover, making them impossible to detect early. By the time soldiers glimpsed a flash or heard the crack of a rifle, someone was already struck down. The next day, on the 21st of May, Hulme was moving between forward positions when he heard the sudden cracking sound of a rifle shot. To his left, a New Zealand corporal collapsed, falling 10 feet as a lethal round found its mark. Moments later, another shot rang out, and a private went down in a spray of blood. Hulme quickly ducked behind an olive tree, instinctively scanning the ridge line for any sign of the attacker. But the sniper was nowhere to be seen, proof of their deadly skill and the harsh reality that they were nearly invisible. Later that afternoon, Hulme volunteered for a solo mission, hunting down the German snipers alone. His battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Leckie, approved without hesitation. Over the following 2 days, operating entirely on his own, Hulme engaged in what became a tense game of cat and mouse, carefully tracking and neutralizing several German snipers through meticulous, patient observation and cautious movement. This was standard counter-sniper work, hours of waiting, watching for a glimpse of movement, and employing disciplined tactics. However, despite his efforts, the problem persisted. For each sniper eliminated, Two more appeared somewhere on the battlefield, emerging like shadows from the darkness, making it clear that this was a battle of endurance and patience that would not be solved quickly or easily. The Germans' ability to infiltrate and strike with such stealth made clear how complex and deadly this type of warfare had become. On the 22nd of May, as Holmes moved cautiously through the grounds of the Field Punishment Center, he unexpectedly came face to face with a lone German paratrooper who had inadvertently strayed from his unit. The young soldier appeared to be no more than 19 years old, with an expression that betrayed confusion and longing, lost amid unfamiliar surroundings. When their eyes met, the German instinctively raised his rifle, clearly ready to defend himself. But Holmes was quicker. In a swift, practiced motion, he fired a single shot, aiming directly at the center of the German's chest. The shot hit true, and the young soldier crumpled to the ground, lifeless. Approaching the fallen enemy, Holmes examined his body closely. The German was dressed in a distinctive camouflage pattern, splintered, designed specifically for the Folsom Jagger units, and easily recognizable. Lying beside the soldier was a rifle, a Carabiner 98 equipped with a Zeiss scope mounted neatly on top, an archetypal German sniper weapon. The rifle was in pristine condition, as if it had just been used in combat and meticulously maintained. Holmes took a long, contemplative look at the equipment before him, mentally assessing the implications. His thoughts drifted to the countless New Zealand soldiers who had fallen prey to unseen foes, snipers hidden in the shadows, striking without warning. He recognized that these German marksmen operated freely in contested zones, blending seamlessly with regular troops at distant ranges, making it almost impossible to distinguish friend from foe. The possibility struck him hard. If he could somehow get close enough to an enemy sniper before they were aware of his presence, he might save many of his comrades' lives. If you're interested in how Holmes's stolen German gear performed in the field, consider reflecting on this story. Such tales help us remember the often overlooked stories from the Second World War, revealing both the dangers and resourcefulness of soldiers in combat. The story of Holmes's encounter continued as he carefully removed the camouflage cloth from the dead German's body. The uniform was still warm, an indication that the soldier had been killed only moments earlier. Blood stained the left side of the camouflage, but otherwise, the uniform remained intact. Holmes then took the German's rifle, inspecting the action closely, and counted the remaining rounds in the magazine. There were 7. Nearby, he found 2 additional magazines stashed on the fallen soldier. Together, they contained a total of 47 rounds in alloyed ammunition, ready to fire. Without hesitation, Holmes donned the camouflage smock over his own New Zealand uniform, effectively disguising himself as the enemy. He slung the Carabiner 98 across his shoulder, feeling the weight of a powerful tool of war. He made no attempt to seek permission or document his actions. Instead, he simply turned toward the enemy lines, blending into their territory while armed with enemy gear. By doing so, he left the next German sniper he might encounter fully unaware of the threat that was now stalking him. Holmes knew that with this kind of disguise, he could approach undetected and strike with deadly precision. A dangerous game, but one that could turn the tide of encounters in this brutal landscape. Just past dawn on the 23rd of May, at about 7 o'clock in the morning, Holmes traversed an expanse of olive groves west of Malm, clad in the German camouflage smock. Its splinter pattern successfully broke up his outline, allowing him to blend seamlessly against the dense Mediterranean vegetation. From a distance of about 200 yards, he appeared indistinguishable from any other member of the Folsom Jagger unit moving through the terrain, an ordinary soldier, yet hiding extraordinary intent beneath the disguise. His first valuable target appeared approximately at 7:15. From his concealed position, Holmes spotted a German sniper who had taken up a vantage point inside the remnants of a stone farmhouse overlooking the coastal road. This position afforded the sniper an unobstructed view of any Allied movements between the towns of Platanius and the nearby airfield, a prime spot for attack. Holmes observed the sniper through his binoculars, noting the man's methodical approach, scanning carefully, operating with the professionalism of a seasoned marksman. The German soldier was patient, seemingly dangerous in his calm efficiency. Holmes decided to approach from the east, walking openly across a field without attempting to conceal himself or make tactical movements. To the casual observer, it appeared as though he was simply a German soldier returning to his post. No suspicion was aroused. As Holmes drew closer, the sniper glanced briefly in his direction, registering the camouflage smock and the now familiar rifle slung at Hume's shoulder. The German sniper returned his attention to the road, with no sign of alarm or suspicion. Holmes continued to close the distance, gradually reducing the gap to about 50 yards, then down to 40, and eventually to just 25 yards. With precise timing, at the critical moment when he was closest, he raised the German rifle, took careful aim, and fired. The sniper was struck immediately, collapsing silently where he stood, effectively neutralized without any warning. Holmes quickly searched the fallen soldier's body for identification, but all he found was a small book bearing a unit designation. The identity remained unknown, but the threat was eliminated with swift efficiency, exemplifying the deadly precision Holmes had mastered in this covert game of cat and mouse amidst the war-torn landscape. The 1st Regiment of Fallschirme was responsible for a key victory on the battlefield, and its success largely depended on the deadly efficiency of one particularly skilled soldier. The fallen man carried with him an arsenal of 120 rounds of ammunition, 3 stick grenades, and an intricately detailed map of Malm Aerodrome, on which the positions of the New Zealand troops had been carefully marked in pencil. That map was a treasure to intelligence officers, offering vital insight into enemy placements and movements. Recognizing its value, Hume took the ammunition and pressed forward, leaving the fallen soldier behind. By midday on the 23rd of May, Hume had eliminated 3 additional German snipers, employing a method so effective that it became his signature. He would walk openly into enemy territory, close the distance stealthily, and then fire a single shot, always relying on the cover provided by the camouflage smoke screen to remain unseen. Each time, the overwhelming advantage of concealment meant that the German soldiers never saw their attacker until it was too late, until they were struck down. They saw one of their own only in the split second before the bullet found its mark, often too late to react. The German shooters, blinded by the smoke and confusion, simply disappeared in chaos, giving Hume the element of surprise each time. This approach immediately made a noticeable difference to the wider operational picture. The number of sniper casualties among the Germans steadily declined, which allowed patrols to move during daylight without fear of losing key personnel, and radio operators survived their missions long enough to transmit crucial intelligence. Officers, once forced to stay low, regained the ability to stand upright and observe enemy positions directly, rather than from cramped, hidden positions. Although nobody knew precisely how Hume was executing these daring attacks, how he navigated so seamlessly behind enemy lines, the results made his reputation clear. He was winning battles in silence and invisibility. Expanding his operations further on the 24th of May, Hume began moving behind German lines, targeting snipers positioned so deep that traditional counter-sniper tactics could not reach them. These missions required him to walk through concentrations of German infantry, sometimes mere yards from unsuspecting soldiers who had no idea a New Zealand sergeant was so close. The ruse was so effective that it held firm every single time. After the initial parachute drop, Fallschirme units operated in dispersed formations, with individual soldiers and small groups constantly shifting between different positions, regrouping, and establishing new firing points to confuse the enemy. Communications were often chaotic, and the cohesion of units loosened under the strain of irregular movement. In such conditions, a single soldier dressed in camouflage blended perfectly into the surroundings, attracting no attention, which Hulme exploited repeatedly throughout the 24th of May. At 2:35 in the afternoon, Hulme moved through a gathering of German troops near the village of Galatis when he was approached by a Fallschirmjägeroberleutnant, an officer in the German command. The officer spoke sharply in German and motioned toward the eastern ridge in precise order. Hulme simply nodded, kept silent, and continued walking in the direction indicated. The officer watched him depart briefly before turning his attention elsewhere, unaware that he had just inadvertently given secret tactical instructions to an enemy sergeant who now knew exactly where the next German attack might be aimed. By the evening of the 24th of May, Hulme had managed to eliminate 11 German snipers over just 3 days of independent, behind enemy lines operations. His battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Leckie, attempted to order Hulme to cease his activities and take a rest, recognizing that the relentless attacks were risking Hulme's life and risking the overall mission. However, Hulme refused to stop. The threat posed by the German snipers was still very real, and the toll on Kiwi soldiers was mounting. Early the next morning, on May 25th, Hulme set out once more into enemy territory. That day, the New Zealand Division launched a vigorous counterattack to recapture the strategically important village of Galatas. The Germans had fortified a school building at the western edge of the town, transforming it into a formidable stronghold. The first assault was halted outright by machine gun fire emanating from the school, which turned the initial attack into a bloody stalemate. During the chaos, troops found themselves pinned down in the streets, unable to break through the enemy's defenses. The operation was on the verge of failure, yet Hulme stepped into the fray. When his platoon was pinned down by the machine gun nest, instead of waiting for support, Hulme moved forward alone through the rubble-strewn streets and debris, risking everything to turn the tide. He arrived at the devastated school building, swiftly reached into his belt to retrieve 3 stick grenades, and without hesitation, threw them through the shattered ground floor windows in rapid succession. The series of explosions tore through the building's interior, silencing the machine gun that had been assaulting their positions moments earlier. This sudden burst of violence sparked a fierce push forward by their counterattack forces. That afternoon, after relentless and brutal house-to-house fighting, the New Zealand units managed to reclaim Galatas, but their hard-won victory was short-lived. Less than a day later, during the cover of night, German reinforcements arrived in force, reinforcing the enemy position and overwhelming their defenses. By sunset on the 26th of May, the battered division of New Zealand soldiers was compelled to begin a strategic withdrawal towards Suda Bay. The evacuation from Crete had already commenced, and it was clear that the island was effectively lost. During that dark night, a runner reached Hulme at the battalion's assembly area. In his hand, he carried a torn piece of paper bearing a message from headquarters. With difficulty, Hulme read the note twice in the muted darkness. The words delivered devastating news. His younger brother, Corporal Harold Charles Hulme, had been killed in action earlier that day, fighting courageously with the 19th Battalion northeast of Galatas. Hulme carefully folded the fragile message, slipping it into his pocket, then grasped a German rifle that had fallen nearby. His hands remained calm, unwavering, yet behind his composed exterior, something fundamental within him had been irrevocably altered. The planned withdrawal could wait. Now his focus was entirely on the personal loss. Just as the retreat continued, German snipers advancing behind the retreating Kiwi soldiers were about to confront a harrowing truth. What happens when war takes on a deeply personal edge? At 5 o'clock in the morning on the 27th of May, Hulme took his position on a hillside overlooking the road leading to Suda Bay. Beneath him, the 23rd Battalion was engaged in a fighting withdrawal, moving steadily westward. Behind their line, German units pushed forward with relentless aggression, attempting to sever the retreat before the Allied forces could reach the safety of the evacuation beaches. As they advanced, German snipers lurked among the ridge lines surrounding the route, their deadly aim precise and calculated. Hulme counted at least 8 enemy shooters working the terrain, specifically targeting commanding officers and non-commissioned officers, aiming to shatter the unit's command structure and disrupt their cohesion, a typical tactic in pursuit operations. Hulme had not slept since he learned about his brother's death, 18 hours earlier. That night, he had moved through enemy positions, gathering intelligence, studying their movements, recognizing the patterns of their most skilled snipers, and memorizing the terrain. Now, driven by a mixture of grief and resolve, he prepared to systematically eliminate these threats. The first sniper appeared at 5:20 in the morning, working his way up a rocky outcrop approximately 300 yards south of the road. The man moved with evident confidence, a sign of seasoned experience. Hulme observed him carefully through his Zeiss scope, patiently waiting until the sniper settled into a firing position. Then, he took his shot, hitting the man squarely in the upper chest. The German instantly dropped backward, tumbling down the rocks below. Hulme immediately moved to his next target. Following the standard counter-sniper doctrine, never firing twice from the same position to avoid triangulation. He took a different angle and shot the second sniper at 6:15. By 7:30, he had taken out a third sniper from a distant position, approximately 800 yards west. By 9 o'clock, Hulme had successfully killed 5 German snipers along a stretch of roughly 2 meters along the withdrawal route. As a result of his precise actions, the rear guard of the New Zealand contingent suddenly accelerated their pace, sustaining fewer casualties and maintaining tighter formations. Remarkably, none of the soldiers in the 23rd Battalion was aware of Hulme's presence. They simply noticed that the relentless and deadly sniper fire had mysteriously ceased, giving them a fleeting advantage amid the chaos of retreat. At precisely 10:40 in the morning, Hulme spotted a carefully concealed group of 5 German snipers establishing their positions on a rugged hillside that overlooked the vulnerable left flank of their battalion. The strategic vantage point was almost impeccable for setting an ambush, offering a clear line of sight across the open valley below. Anyone moving across that terrain would be exposed to unimpeded gunfire. Holmes recognized that if these snipers remained in their concealed positions, the upcoming withdrawal could turn into a deadly slaughter, with many of their soldiers falling victim to precision fire from the hillside. Moving with confident purpose from the north, Holmes advanced openly down the gentle slope, dressed in camouflage smoke, and carrying his trusted carabiner 98 rifle. From roughly 400 yards away, the Germans clearly spied him approaching. One of them lifted a hand in a casual wave, while another shouted something in German that Holmes could not understand. Despite the signals, Holmes kept his gaze steady and continued walking directly toward them, maintaining a calm and deliberate pace. As he drew closer, at distances of 70, 60, and then 50 yards, he remained unfazed. When he reached about 40 yards, one of the Germans stood up, strolling casually in Holmes's direction with a broad smile on his face. The German said something in a conversational tone, probably questioning where Holmes's unit was positioned or whether he had seen any enemy movement. Without hesitation, Holmes raised his rifle and shot the man in the chest, hitting him cleanly. The remaining 4 Germans immediately froze in shock, their minds struggling to process what their eyes had just seen. One of their own had suddenly shot another. This shattered every assumption they held about the situation, leaving them momentarily stunned. Holmes then smoothly operated his bolt-action rifle, firing again without pause, and took down the second German. The remaining 3 soldiers desperately scrambled to raise their weapons, but Holmes was relentless. 2 more fired rapidly in quick succession, and both fell similarly. The last of the 5, frantically trying to get his rifle up, managed to fire a single shot. The bullet whistled past 6 inches over Holmes's head before crashing into the rocks behind him. Holmes's next shot was precise and deadly, striking true. Carefully, he methodically searched the fallen bodies, discovering they had been carrying a significant cache of equipment: 400 rounds of rifle ammunition, 2 signal flares, field glasses, and secret orders. The documents revealed they had been specifically tasked with watching the New Zealand withdrawal, containing detailed intelligence about unit movements and timing. It was evident that someone within German intelligence had pinpointed exactly where the retreat was headed. Taking the ammunition and the vital orders, Holmes continued his deadly pursuit of the remaining snipers. By 2 o'clock on May the 27th, his confirmed kill count had risen to 16 adversaries within a span of just 2.5 days. During a brief pause in the movement, his battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Leckie, tracked him down. He asked Holmes directly whether he could continue to operate independently, recognizing the critical role Holmes played in reducing their sniper threat. The German snipers had been causing devastating casualties among the rear guard units, impeding the withdrawal and threatening the entire operation. Each sniper Holmes eliminated meant more New Zealand soldiers reached the evacuation beaches alive. Holmes responded simply that he could continue. He did not mention his brother, nor did he reveal his personal motivations. The colonel then granted him written authorization to operate freely for as long as he deemed necessary, and assured Holmes that he could requisition any equipment or support he required. At 4:30 in the afternoon, Holmes was already back in the field, well ahead of the battalion, scouting the next segment of the withdrawal route. The pathway wound through a narrow, rocky valley flanked on both sides by steep, commanding ridges, an ideal terrain for snipers, a textbook killing ground, perfectly suited to their deadly ambitions. While stealthily concealed amidst the rugged rocks, he discovered a trio of German snipers already in their positions, silently awaiting the arrival of the New Zealand battalion as they made their way through the valley. These enemy snipers were not only well hidden, but also exhibited remarkable discipline and coordination, traits that made them a deadly threat should they be allowed to act. Their presence alone had the potential to unleash devastation upon the advancing battalion, targeting soldiers with lethal precision. However, before the lead elements of the battalion could even come into view, Hulme acted decisively and eliminated all 3 snipers in quick succession. As a result of his quick and effective actions, the 23rd Battalion managed to traverse the entire length of the valley without suffering any casualties from sniper fire, a remarkable feat considering the danger they faced. By the time night fell on the 27th of May, Hulme had personally killed an astonishing total of 19 German snipers in just one single day, significantly reducing the threat on the battalion's flank. Nevertheless, the ongoing withdrawal had not yet reached its conclusion. The following day, the battalion would have to push through even more treacherous terrain to reach the safety of Stylos, with the enemy awaiting them armed with everything they could muster. At exactly 4:30 in the morning on May the 28th, the 23rd Battalion commenced its strategic withdrawal from the defensive line positioned west of Galidus, heading toward the town of Stylos. The route they chose for retreat traversed exposed and vulnerable terrain, offering very limited opportunities for concealment or cover. German forces, keenly aware of the battalion's movements, pressed them from multiple directions with relentless intensity. The rearguard action rapidly deteriorated into a chaotic fighting retreat, where continuous contact with the enemy made retreat an arduous and perilous ordeal. Before dawn broke, Hulme moved ahead of the main body of soldiers, scouting the high ground that overlooked the path they were retreating along. The ridge at Stylos was of paramount strategic importance, as it dominated the entire approach. Control of this high ground would determine whether the battalion could escape or be cut off. Should the Germans establish a position there first, the entire retreat could be thwarted, leaving the battalion trapped and vulnerable. At 5:15 in the morning, Hulme reached the crest of the ridge and immediately identified a critical threat. A German heavy mortar crew was in the process of setting up their weapon on the military top of the hill, a place that offered a commanding view of the surrounding terrain. The crew consisted of 4 men, one of whom was operating a Granit Vurer 34 mortar. They were diligently positioning their weapon to direct precise fire onto the narrow stretch of road the New Zealand rearguard would have to use during the withdrawal. Their timing was impeccable, ensuring that the mortar would unleash destruction at the most vulnerable moment, precisely when the battalion was most exposed. At that distance, about 800 yards, Hulme knew a direct rifle shot would be ineffective. He had the range, but not the accuracy. He could report the mortar's location to battalion headquarters, but by the time they coordinated a response, the Germans' weapon would likely be firing, and soldiers would be caught in the open. Waiting for others to act meant risking the lives of many soldiers during this critical phase. Realizing the urgency, Hulme decided to close the distance himself. The terrain offered little cover, but he skillfully utilized the small patches of dead ground and natural rock formations to approach closer without being detected. Still, the final 300 yards required him to cross open terrain directly in sight of the enemy and their mortar position. Standing tall, he adjusted his camouflage smock to mask his silhouette and walked purposefully toward the Germans, who immediately noticed him. One of the enemy's soldiers waved, while another shouted a question, alerting him to their awareness of his presence. Hulme responded with a casual wave and continued walking steadily. To the Germans, he appeared to be just another reconnoitering soldier checking nearby positions. They resumed their setup work, unaware of his true intent. At approximately 50 yards from the mortar crew, Hulme could hear the muffled conversations and commands of the Germans. As he drew closer, about 30 yards, he distinctly heard one of them chuckle at something amusing, perhaps a joke or a remark. When he reached a mere 15 yards distance, Hulme swiftly raised his Carabiner 98 rifle, took careful aim, and shot the nearest German soldier. Without hesitation, he worked the bolt action and fired again, ensuring that the target was neutralized. The second German soldier was immediately struck down as he scrambled for his weapon before he could return fire. With precision and lethal efficiency, Hume then approached the mortar position itself. Examining the setup, he saw that the Granit Führer 34 mortar was already fully assembled and pointed in a threatening direction. The ammunition boxes stacked nearby contained 60 mortar rounds, enough to cause widespread destruction and chaos during the battalion's retreat. In that moment, Hume's brave intervention had prevented a catastrophe, disrupting the enemy's plan to strike at the most vulnerable point in their withdrawal. Hume carefully removed the firing pin assembly from the mortar, discarded it down the hillside, and kicked the ammunition crates after it, as though casting away remnants of the fight. From his vantage point at the mortar position, he had a clear and unobstructed view of the surrounding terrain, allowing him to observe every movement along the ridge. Using his field glasses, he meticulously scanned the undulating line of elevation ahead and quickly identified 3 additional German snipers taking position along the western approach leading into Stylos. These enemy marksmen were methodically establishing a coordinated kill zone, aimed at pinning down the New Zealand rearguard from multiple angles to maximize their effectiveness. Without hesitation, Hume moved along the ridge toward what he recognized as the first sniper's concealed position. The German was deeply engrossed, fixated on the distant road, silently watching for targets, completely unaware of Hume's approach from behind. Taking his shot swiftly, Hume fired once, a single, precise shot, and saw the sniper pitched forward, collapsing into the dirt. Not far to the west, some 200 yards away, another German sniper was in position, and Hume approached him in a similar deliberate manner, walking openly across the open terrain, closing the distance steadily until he was close enough to fire once again. The second sniper fell with a single shot, dropping to the ground without another shot fired in reply. However, the third sniper was more alert and perceptive. As Hume closed within 80 yards, the German abruptly turned his head and looked directly at him. For a tense moment, the 2 men locked eyes across the space that separated them, Hume holding his ground, the German tense and vigilant. The German's gaze shifted from his camouflage smock to Hume's face, then to the rifle he held in his hands, as if recognizing something was amiss. A flicker of awareness crossed the German's face. Wrong face, wrong expression, wrong stance. Suddenly, he swung his rifle around to fire. Hume reacted instantly, squeezing the trigger first. The German was hit and went down, but not before managing to get off one shot as he fell. The bullet struck Hume high in his left shoulder, spinning him sideways in the dirt. He dropped to one knee, hastily working the bolt of his rifle to chamber another round, and fired again to ensure the German sniper remained down. Blood seeped through his camouflage smock, darkening the fabric and pooling onto the ground. The wound was severe, damaged bone, heavy bleeding, and Hume was acutely aware of his deteriorating condition. He desperately needed medical help at once. Still, his concern was compounded by the fact that the 23rd Battalion was still moving through the withdrawal route below him, and that more German snipers were lurking nearby, waiting for the right moment to strike. In a quick, resourceful move, Hume tore a strip from the uniform of the fallen enemy and wrapped it around his injured shoulder as a makeshift field dressing. The bleeding slowed but did not entirely stop, leaving him barely stable. Carefully, he reached for his Carabiner 98 rifle with his right hand, as his left arm refused to respond properly, hanging uselessly at his side. At exactly 8:30 in the morning, Hume remained perched on the ridge when he noticed another German sniper creeping cautiously toward the road, moving with practiced professionalism. The enemy soldier was setting up for a shot directed at the New Zealand rearguard, target number 34. Hume raised his rifle with his one good hand, bracing it against the rocky surface, attempting to aim at the approaching figure. His vision blurred, and the scope wavered, making it difficult to get a steady shot. Despite the difficulty, he squeezed the trigger. The shot went wide of its mark. The German sniper spun around upon hearing the shot, instantly recognizing Hume and returning fire. The second bullet tore into Hume's shoulder once more, shattering muscle and bone in its destructive path. He was forced to fall backward behind the rocks, retreating from the oncoming danger. His left arm was now completely useless, incapacitated entirely. Blood pooled beneath him as he lay on the ground, the pain intense and relentless. He could hear the German sniper moving closer, steps crunching through the gravel, approaching with apparent caution, the rifle raised, searching for a target to finish him off. In that moment, Hume understood that this was how it would end, alone on a ridge, surrounded and outnumbered. He counted, in his fading awareness, that there were 33 German snipers already killed, yet the 34th still remained alive. He heard the crunch of the enemy's boots growing nearer, approaching within perhaps 30 feet, then 20. The German was moving with meticulous caution, the rifle held steady and ready, carefully checking his angles, a testament to his professionalism and experience. Hume's vision blurred further, but he kept his focus, knowing that despite the bleakness, every moment could be his last. He was fully aware that Hume had sustained a serious wound, yet he also knew that his comrade was not yet dead, and that even wounded men could still muster the strength to fight on. Hume's right hand instinctively grasped a sizable rock, almost the size of a grenade, seeking a makeshift weapon or shield. His vision blurred and swayed, a clear sign that blood loss was rapidly debilitating his body, threatening to cause him to collapse entirely. Moments later, he noticed the unmistakable sound of footsteps halting roughly 10 feet away. The German soldier was cautiously circling around the jagged rocks, trying to find a momentary gap to take a clean shot without exposing himself too much. In that tense instant, Hume threw the rock forcefully to his left side. It clattered loudly against the stones about 30 feet away, alerting the German to the sound. Turning sharply towards the noise, the enemy soldier fired twice in quick succession. Seizing the chance, Hume rolled swiftly to his right, risking everything to stay alive. He reached with his remaining functional hand and grasped a loose stone, then hurled it directly at the German's head. The strike was not enough to kill or incapacitate the soldier outright, but it caused him to stumble backward, momentarily shaken. Taking advantage of the distraction, Hume lunged forward with all his remaining strength, forcing his weight behind his attack and toppling the German to the ground. The sniper tried in vain to raise his rifle to counterattack, but Hume grasped the barrel firmly with his right hand and wrenched it sideways with force. The German, quick to defend himself, pulled out a knife from his belt. Hume responded with 2 vicious headbutts, feeling the crack of his opponent's broken nose, then pressed on with relentless determination until the German stopped moving altogether. For a long, aching moment, Hume remained sprawled on top of his unconscious adversary, breathing heavily, desperately fighting to stay conscious amid the chaos. Blood soaked his left shoulder, which was utterly destroyed, and a widespread pool of blood surrounded him. He knew he had to leave this ridge immediately before he bled out or more enemies arrived on the scene. Luckily, the route down the hill was now clear, the enemy's retreating units having already passed through. The 23rd Battalion had gone ahead, leaving him isolated on the ridge amidst the fallen Germans and with no way to contact friendly forces. Despite his grievous wounds and weakness, Hume slowly started to crawl downhill, dragging along his useless left arm as best as he could. He carefully followed the path taken by his battalion, guided by instinct and hope. By 9:40 in the morning, a patrol from New Zealand discovered him collapsed on the road about 2 miles from Stylos. The patrol commander saw immediately how dire Hume's condition was, noting his severe wounds. Without delay, he called for stretcher bearers to assist. Hume attempted to protest and warn them about enemy positions, but his words came out garbled and incoherent. The rescue team carried him swiftly to the battalion's aid station at Stylos. The medical officer examined the gruesome damage to his shoulder and quickly identified the need for urgent evacuation. Both bullets had shattered the scapula into fragments embedded deep within his muscles. Without prompt surgical intervention, the prognosis was grim. He faced the risk of losing his arm or dying from a severe infection. Later that afternoon, Lieutenant Colonel Leckie visited him at the aid station. The colonel brought with him the latest field reports indicating that the German sniper activity along the withdrawal route had nearly stopped entirely. The rearguard troops had suffered only minimal casualties during their retreat to Stylos. Leckie also informed Hume that the German sniper position he had destroyed would have likely killed dozens of soldiers if it had remained operational. Then, with a tone of respect and recognition, the colonel told him that Hume was being recommended for the Victoria Cross. During their conversation, Hume inquired anxiously about his brother's body, if anyone had managed to recover it, and whether a proper grave would be laid for him. Unfortunately, Leckie had no concrete information. The 19th Battalion's withdrawal had taken place under intense enemy fire, and many soldiers had been left behind, their bodies unrecovered. By the 29th of May, the 23rd Battalion had completed its hasty withdrawal to the coastal town of Spakia on the southern shore of Crete. Meanwhile, the Royal Navy was engaged in a relentless effort to evacuate Allied forces from the beaches amid relentless German air attacks. Hume was eventually loaded onto a destroyer, along with hundreds of other wounded soldiers, as part of the desperate retreat. On the evening of May 30th, at precisely 11 o'clock, the ship began its departure from Crete, setting course across the water toward Egypt. The journey, which lasted for a total of 18 hours, was fraught with danger, as enemy aircraft from Germany launched 2 daring attacks against the convoy. During one of these assaults, the destroyer's anti-aircraft artillery responded with fierce determination, managing to shoot down 3 Junkers 87 Stuka dive bombers before they could cause further harm. Hume watched this harrowing scene unfold from the calm confines of the medical bay, lying motionless and helpless. All he could do was stay still, trying desperately not to reopen the wounds that throbbed painfully beneath his bandages. The ship finally reached the shores of Alexandria on the 1st of June, bringing an end to a tense and perilous voyage. Almost immediately, Hume was transferred to a military hospital where a team of surgeons labored for 4 hours, carefully extracting fragments of bullets lodged deep within his body and repairing the extensive tissue damage. The doctors delivered the grim news that, due to the severity of his injuries, he would never regain full mobility in his left arm and would need to be discharged from military service. His combat days, he was told, had come to an end. By the 15th of June, Hume found himself aboard a hospital ship heading for New Zealand, with the voyage lasting 3 arduous weeks. Most of those days, he spent staring at the ceiling of the medical ward, lost in reflection. His thoughts drifted to the brother he had lost, to the snipers he had killed in the line of duty, and to the men of the 23rd Battalion who had managed to escape Cree's deadly snipers because they happened to be elsewhere at the right moment. When the ship finally arrived in Auckland on the 10th of July, at the early hour of 7 in the morning, he saw his wife, Rona, waiting anxiously on the pier. She hadn't been told about his wounds, so her reaction was one of shock and tears when she saw him descending the gangway, his left arm now slung in a makeshift sling and weighing 40 pounds less than when he had left. The sight of him, so changed and battered, broke her heart. Hume then spent the subsequent 6 weeks at a rehabilitation facility in Rotorua, engaging in physical therapy and undergoing psychological assessments, alongside continual reviews by the medical board. The Army's conclusion was clear: they intended to discharge him, deeming him medically unfit for any further service. He did not protest this decision. He understood that his shoulder would never fully recover. He could barely lift his left arm above his chest, and every attempt to regain strength seemed futile. However, on the 20th of August, a telegram arrived from Army headquarters in Wellington. It conveyed the approval of his nomination for the Victoria Cross, a prestigious military honor. The official Gazette announcement would be published in October. Hume read the message twice, then carefully tucked it into his pocket. Yet, in his heart, he knew that such recognition paled in comparison to the pain of what he had lost. His brother remained dead, the 23rd Battalion was still engaged in North Africa without him, and 33 German snipers lay dead on a remote Greek island that the Allies had long since abandoned. A silent question lingered in his mind. Did any of it truly matter? Did the act of killing those snipers change anything at all? Did his brother's death carry any deeper significance? Was the entire conflict just a catastrophic defeat, one that caused the loss of thousands of Allied lives for no strategic purpose? On the 10th of October, 1941, the London Gazette finally published Hume's Victoria Cross citation, officially describing his actions during a critical period from the 20th to the 28th of May. It detailed how he led counterattacks at Malum, destroyed an enemy machine gun emplacement at Galatas, eliminated 5 snipers at Suda Bay, and took out a mortar crew at Stylos. The account specified that he had stalked and shot a total of 33 enemy snipers, highlighting his bravery in the face of deadly danger. Interestingly, The citation made no mention of the German camouflage smock or the clever deception tactics he had used to survive. The story of his courageous deeds made front-page headlines across New Zealand, capturing the nation's admiration and pride at his valor. Yet, amidst the applause and accolades, Hulme felt a sobering weight of disillusionment, a quiet acknowledgement that recognition could not undo the profound loss he carried within him. Victoria Cross recipient and revered national hero, Hugh Hulme, a humble farm laborer from the small town of Dunedin, distinguished himself during the war by undertaking a daring solo operation behind enemy lines. There, he meticulously hunted down and eliminated German snipers who had been terrorizing Allied positions. The story of his bravery resonated deeply within the national consciousness, and newspapers across the country enthusiastically heralded his actions. The general public was captivated by the account, lauding him as a symbol of courage and sacrifice. Yet, for Hulme himself, the overwhelming attention was a source of discomfort. He despised the spotlight and wished to disappear into obscurity. On the 7th of November, Hugh Hulme traveled to Wellington to participate in a formal ceremony at Government House, where he was to be officially decorated with the Victoria Cross. The event was attended by a gathering of military officials, politicians, and journalists. The Governor-General, Cyril Newell, carefully pinned the coveted medal onto Hulme's uniform in front of the assembled crowd, formalizing his heroism. Photographers snapped pictures capturing the moment, while speeches extolled qualities such as bravery, duty, and the enduring traditions that exemplified New Zealand's military service. Throughout it all, Hulme maintained a rigid stance at attention, remaining silent and lost in thought, his mind drifting to darker memories, particularly his brother's unmarked grave somewhere on Crete. After the ceremony concluded, a journalist approached Hulme, asking how it felt to be a hero. His answer was simple: it did not feel like anything at all. The reporter pressed further, requesting a vivid description of the moment he decided to seize the German equipment. Hulme explained that there was no single defining moment. Simply an opportunity presented itself, and he took it. When asked if he had felt fear at that instant, Hulme replied that everyone was afraid, but bravery was about doing what needed to be done despite that fear. The interviewer continued with questions until Hulme, evidently growing impatient, walked away to escape the relentless probing. Several months later, on the 17th of February, 1942, the Army officially discharged Hugh Hulme from service, citing his condition as medically unfit, at least temporarily. The injury to his left shoulder had failed to heal properly, severely limiting his range of motion and rendering him unable to handle a rifle effectively. The medical board determined that, in all likelihood, he would never regain full combat fitness. At the age of 31, Hulme stepped back into civilian life, carrying his Victoria Cross as a symbol of valor, but bearing a useless arm and no clear idea of what path lay ahead. The war was still raging abroad. His comrades from the 23rd Battalion continued fighting in North Africa, enduring the hardships of combat while he remained home, often participating in civic ceremonies and having his photo taken. In May of 1942, the government called him back into service, but this time for home defense. Assigned to non-combat duties, Hulme spent over a year training recruits and performing administrative tasks. For 15 months, he dedicated himself to instructing young soldiers in basic infantry tactics. By September of 1943, he was again discharged, this time achieving the rank of Warrant Officer Second Class. After the war, Hugh relocated to Pongakawa, near Tepik in the Bay of Plenty region. There, he purchased a modest trucking business and worked as a general carrier, hauling freight, moving equipment, and performing tasks that did not require the use of both shoulders. Steady work, sufficient pay, and a quiet life became his new normal. Throughout this period, nobody pressed him about his war experiences or the details surrounding the deed that earned him the Victoria Cross. He married Rona Marjorie Murcott, a local woman, and together they had 2 sons. Throughout his life, Hulme chose to keep his past private. He never spoke explicitly about the sniper encounter, nor did he ever recount how he won the medal. When approached with questions by acquaintances or veterans organizations, he simply shifted the conversation and avoided elaboration. In 1946, the British government extended an invitation to all Victoria Cross recipients within the Commonwealth to travel to London for the victory celebrations. Hume accepted the invitation and journeyed to the United Kingdom. During his time there, he met other men who had earned the same prestigious medal, attending formal dinners, participating in military parades, and exchanging stories. He even shook hands with the king and listened to Winston Churchill deliver a speech. Despite the grandeur of these events, Hume found himself wishing more than anything to be back in New Zealand, hauling freight and leading a quiet life away from the spotlight. Meanwhile, over subsequent years, military historians diligently sought out veterans of the 23rd Battalion to deepen the understanding of the Crete incident, interviewing those who had fought alongside him and piecing together a fuller picture of his heroic act. Several witnesses attested to having seen Hume clad in the distinctive camouflage smock of the German forces. Others recalled discovering deceased German snipers, yet there was never any clear explanation as to who might have been responsible for their deaths. One particular sergeant vividly remembered Hume vanishing for days at a time during the retreat, only to reappear later with supplies of ammunition that had not been issued to him. Over time, these stories became widespread, fueling a growing legend around his actions. Hume never publicly corrected these embellishments nor disputed any of the inaccuracies that circulated. Instead, he chose to remain silent whenever questions arose, refusing to engage with the speculation. In the year 1953, a military historian approached him directly to inquire about his feelings regarding the killing of 33 enemy soldiers. Hume replied that he felt no emotion about it at all. When further pressed on whether he thought about the Germans he had killed, Hume responded that his thoughts were with his brother instead. The researcher then asked if he harbored any regrets concerning his wartime actions. Hume stated that his only regret was that the 34th sniper had managed to escape. Fast forward to 1967, when his son Dennis Hume achieved something remarkable, winning the Formula One World Drivers' Championship. As news of this triumph spread, the media descended on the town of Pongawa, eager to seek out the father of New Zealand's racing hero. There, they found an unassuming 60-year-old man working as a trucking company manager, who kept a Victoria Cross tucked away in a drawer and showed little interest in discussing either his military achievements or his sporting success. Hume continued to manage his trucking business until he reached retirement age, maintaining only minimal contact with military institutions. He participated in Anzac Day commemorations, but refrained from giving speeches or public statements. When the Queen Elizabeth II Army Memorial Museum at Wuru requested to borrow his Victoria Cross for exhibition purposes, he agreed on the condition that they not make a fuss about it or turn it into a publicity spectacle. Alfred Clive Hulme passed away peacefully on the 2nd of September, 1982, at the age of 71, due to natural causes and without prior warning. His remains were interred at Dudley Cemetery, where he was laid to rest with full military honors. Veterans from the 2nd New Zealand Expeditionary Force served as pallbearers, accompanying him to his final resting place in a brief funeral service devoid of eulogies or speeches praising heroism, exactly as he had wished. His Victoria Cross was displayed at the Wuru Museum until the 2nd of December, 2007, when thieves broke into the museum and stole the medal along with 8 other Victoria Crosses. The incident drew outrage internationally, prompting British Lord Michael Ashcraft-Toft and New Zealand businessman Tom Sturgis to post a reward of $300,000 for information leading to its recovery. On the 16th of February, 2008, police managed to recover all 9 medals unharmed. However, questions remained shrouded in mystery. What exactly had Hume accomplished on Crete? Was it just the killing of 33 snipers, or did his efforts contribute to saving dozens of New Zealand lives? Did his Victoria Cross truly encapsulate his heroism, or was it merely a symbol among many? Despite holding these distinctions, the Allies had still lost the larger battle. The island of Crete had fallen, and his brother was still buried in an unmarked grave. The Battle of Crete endured for 11 arduous days, from the 20th of May to the 31st of May, in the year 1941, an intense and ultimately unsuccessful defensive campaign. Allied forces faced the largest airborne invasion in military history, fighting desperately against overwhelming odds. When the fighting concluded, 3,500 Allied soldiers lay dead, and 12,000 were captured. The survivors were evacuated by sea to Egypt, while German casualties were also significant, about 4,000 killed and 2,500 wounded. The formidable Folsom Jaeger divisions suffered irreparable damage, never fully recovering from the loss. As a consequence, Adolf Hitler issued a ban on large-scale airborne operations for the remainder of the war, but despite these restrictions, Germany managed to hold Crete. The Allies, however, were unable to do the same. In that broader context, Hulme's individual achievements appeared relatively insignificant. A solitary sniper responsible for the deaths of only 33, amid thousands of casualties inflicted on both sides. In the grand scheme of warfare, a seemingly minor tactical engagement can often contrast sharply with the larger narrative, illustrating that even a single tactical move can have a strategic impact, albeit a limited one. For instance, a lone sergeant, armed with a captured rifle, managed to slow down the rapid advance of German forces for a few crucial hours. While this act demonstrated individual bravery and resourcefulness, the broader realities painted a different picture altogether. Over the course of just a little more than a week, specifically from the 20th to the 28th of May, German sniper units operating around the town of Malami and along the withdrawal routes leading to Suda Bay were responsible for the deaths of roughly 200 Allied soldiers. It is highly probable that the actual number was significantly higher, considering that many fatalities attributed to direct combat were, in fact, the result of sniper fire, often targeting key personnel such as officers, radio operators, and medical staff. The German forces adopted a deliberate strategy of systematically hunting down individuals of high value, aiming to cripple the Allied command structure and communication channels. Focusing on the sector where Hulme, an infamous Allied sniper, operated, the effectiveness of German snipers plummeted by an astonishing 90% after the 23rd of May. Records from the 20th to the 22nd of May reveal that the 57th Battalion suffered a total of 47 casualties due to sniper engagements. Conversely, in the following days, May the 23rd through the 30th, their losses from snipers sharply declined to just 6. The key factor behind this dramatic decrease was Hulme's intervention. During those 8 days, he recorded 33 confirmed kills, averaging slightly more than 4 enemy snipers eliminated each day. Such a feat placed him among the most formidable counter-snipers of the entire Second World War. To put this into perspective, Soviet sniper Vasily Zaitsev managed to kill 242 Germans over several years on the Eastern Front, while Finnish sniper Simo Haya, known as the White Death, claimed 505 Soviet kills during the Winter War. Both these legendary marksmen operated within conventional sniper roles, employing standard tactics for extended periods. In stark contrast, Hulme's accomplishment involved assassinating 33 enemy snipers in just 8 days, all while operating alone behind enemy lines, employing deception tactics that blatantly violated the laws of war. No other documented instance in the history of World War II matches this combination of speed, effectiveness, and operational daring. The Germans' key innovation was the use of camouflage, the so-called smock, which played a vital role in Hulme's success. Traditional counter-sniper doctrine at the time relied heavily on meticulous observation, triangulation of fire, and suppressive tactics. These methods, however, were often slow, costly, and ineffective against highly skilled snipers who habitually changed their positions. Hulme circumvented these limitations entirely by simply approaching enemy snipers directly, walking up to them, appearing to be one of their own, and catching them off guard. This strategy, undoubtedly risky, placed Hulme's life in constant peril. If he had been discovered, he would have faced immediate execution, either as a spy or saboteur, under the provisions of the Geneva Conventions. Once a soldier disguised in enemy uniform was caught, he forfeited his protections under international law, and the Germans might have been justified in shooting him on sight. Fully aware of these dangers, Hulme took the risk time and again, trusting in his deception to hold long enough for him to close in for the kill. Remarkably, this approach was successful 33 times. Despite its notable effectiveness, such tactics were never officially adopted by Allied military command. Legal advisors raised concerns about their legality under international treaties, which explicitly prohibited the use of enemy uniforms for the purpose of deception. While it was clear that this practice violated certain laws, potentially classifying it as a war crime, the reality was complex. Hume's actions did not involve atrocities or targeting of civilians. Instead, he focused solely on eliminating enemy combatants who were actively killing Allied soldiers. After the war, military historians engaged in heated debates over whether Hume's tactics should be classified as lawful or criminal. They acknowledged that, although the use of enemy attire was illegal, his targeting was confined to military personnel. His daring maneuver, masking himself in enemy clothing, was primarily a means to conduct quick, precise eliminations of enemy snipers, rather than an act of violence against noncombatants. Ultimately, a pragmatic acceptance of the situation became the prevailing consensus among military circles. No one was prepared to press charges against a soldier who had been awarded the Victoria Cross for tactics that directly contributed to saving numerous Allied lives. The broader and more complex question that lingered was whether Sergeant Hume's remarkable success illustrated any fundamental principles of military strategy or doctrine. Could the German camouflage that Hume exploited be considered a standardized method, reusable and reliable? Was it feasible to train other soldiers to adopt the same approach and achieve comparable results? The prevailing judgment appeared to be negative. Hume's extraordinary accomplishment was heavily reliant on a set of unique and highly specific circumstances that could not be easily recreated or institutionalized. Factors such as the disorderly chaos during the German airborne assault, the scattered and decentralized nature of the Fallschirmjäger operations, and the fact that German snipers acted independently, without tight unit coordination, all contributed to the deception's success. Moreover, the confusion and disarray during the Allied withdrawal further augmented the illusion. Remove any one of these elements, and the deception would most likely have collapsed instantly. More critically, Hume possessed qualities that defied formal training or standard military comprehension. His psychological resilience allowed him to calmly advance toward enemy soldiers while disguised in their uniforms. He exhibited an unwavering confidence that enabled him to maintain the ruse even when under close scrutiny or observation. His situational awareness was exceptional, knowing precisely when to abandon the act and take lethal action. These attributes, so vital to his effectiveness, were rooted in innate personal characteristics, not learned skills. The vast majority of soldiers did not share these qualities. The 23rd Battalion learned this bitter lesson after the death of Crete. During subsequent campaigns in North Africa, some men attempted to emulate Hume's tactics, only to face tragic consequences. 2 were killed immediately when German soldiers recognized their deception, while another was captured and executed. As a result, the battalion issued strict orders forbidding the use of enemy uniforms altogether. The risks proved too high, the tactics too unreliable, and their success relied too heavily on individual qualities that most soldiers lacked. Consequently, Hume remained a singular phenomenon. A single sergeant, just over a week, with a total of 33 German snipers eliminated, an unprecedented, one-time tactical innovation that, in its essence, could never be truly replicated. Yet, for the men of the 23rd Battalion, who had survived the harrowing withdrawal from Crete, that single, unreproducible success was enough. They understood completely how many lives had been spared because Hume, disguised in a stolen German smock and wielding a rifle of a dead enemy, had taken out those snipers. The official Victoria Cross citation for Sergeant Alfred Clive Hulme contained only 163 words. It detailed his actions from May 20th to May 28th in the year 1941, leading attacks at Malm, clearing enemy positions at Galatas, and destroying a mortar crew at Stylos. The closing line emphasized that he had stalked and shot down 33 enemy snipers before being severely wounded. That number, 33, became a defining detail in every historical record, military database, and biography concerning him. It represented an incredible feat: 33 confirmed kills over just 8 days of solo operations behind enemy lines. No other Allied soldier during the Second World War matched that sniper elimination record within such a compressed period. Yet, the significance of the number extended beyond mere statistics. Each of those 33 fallen German snipers represented an unknown but vital number of Allied soldiers who had survived because that particular sniper was absent when their units moved through his sector. How many lives were spared? Perhaps 10 per sniper, or 20, or even 50. The exact math was almost impossible to determine with precision, but the overall impact was unmistakably clear. Hulme's actions during the campaign resulted in saving hundreds of lives, perhaps even more than 1,000. Yet his success did not stem from elaborate strategies or dazzling tactics. Instead, it was achieved through a straightforward, brutally efficient approach. Approach the enemy, get close enough, and fire first. This relentless cycle was repeated over and over until the sniper was either wounded or killed. The German commanders operating on Crete never fully understood the true nature of what was happening to their snipers. Records from after-action reports indicated confusing, unexplained losses among the Falun Jagger sniper teams during the final week of the campaign. Several reports specifically mentioned discovering dead snipers with no clear sign of how they had been killed, no artillery strikes, no aerial assaults, just solitary rifle shots fired from close range. One German intelligence analysis even speculated that Allied forces had employed specialized counter-sniper units equipped with silenced weapons designed to eliminate enemy sharpshooters discreetly. Another report suggested that partisan activity by local civilians might have been responsible. Yet, no one truly guessed the real reason behind these losses. The truth was kept hidden, known only to a few. It was a single New Zealand sergeant, operating in disguise, who ultimately revealed part of the deception. This deception remained classified for many years after the conflict had ended, as both British and New Zealand military authorities recognized that exposing such tactics would violate international laws, even if those tactics proved effective in saving lives. Hulme's Victoria Cross citation acknowledged his numerous sniper kills but deliberately omitted any mention of the German camouflage smock or the clever deception methods he used. The full story only started to emerge gradually over time as veterans shared their accounts and military historians gained access to declassified records. By that point, Hulme was long since removed from active service and showed little interest in revisiting the details of what had transpired. When questioned, he consistently provided the same simple explanation. He saw enemy equipment that could help him eliminate German snipers. He took what was necessary, and he used it. That was all there was to it. However, that straightforward answer concealed a much deeper and more complex inquiry. What kind of person could do what Hulme did? What enduring psychological makeup enabled someone to walk calmly toward the enemy, dressed in their uniform, fully aware that discovery would likely mean immediate execution? Most soldiers would have been unable to maintain such deception for more than a few minutes. Yet Hulme sustained it for an astonishing 8 days. The underlying answer seemed to lie in grief and rage, emotions sharply focused into an unwavering resolve. His brother had passed away on May 26th, and in the 2 days that followed, Hulme eliminated 19 snipers. The timing was anything but accidental. Something had fundamentally shifted after he received that message about Harold. While his tactical approach remained unchanged, his emotional drivers had profoundly transformed the scene. No longer was this solely about saving Allied lives. It became a personal vendetta to make the Germans pay for their losses. That intense motivation probably played a crucial role in keeping him alive amid the chaos. Soldiers who fought purely for abstract principles sometimes hesitated at critical moments, caught between duty and doubt. But those fighting for deeply personal reasons often pressed on without hesitation. When Hulme moved toward those 5 German snipers on that hillside and opened fire from a mere 40 yards, he wasn't contemplating military doctrines or tactical advantages. His thoughts boiled down to one thing: his brother, lying somewhere nearby, dead on this same island. That unwavering focus drove him to take action, and afterward, he went back into the fray, continuing to kill more Germans. If this story resonated with you in the way it did with us, I'd ask you to do a small favor. Please consider showing your support by clicking that like button. Each person's like encourages YouTube to share this story with a wider audience, helping others understand the extraordinary lengths to which a single person can go when driven by the deepest personal pain and resolve. Every day, we dedicate ourselves to unearthing long-forgotten stories from dusty archives. breathing new life into histories that might otherwise be lost forever. These tales include accounts of courageous sergeants who risked everything to save lives by using stolen rifles and cunning deception, proving that heroism often resides in the most unexpected places. These are stories about real people facing extraordinary circumstances, showcasing genuine acts of bravery and resilience. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section right now. Let us know where you're watching from, whether it's the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, or somewhere else across the globe. Our community is truly international, spanning countless countries and cultures. Recognize that you are more than simply an observer. You become an integral part of preserving these vital memories. Tell us your location or share if someone in your family has served in the armed forces. Reach out and let us know you're here, supporting these stories that deserve to be remembered. Your participation helps ensure that these remarkable men are not forgotten and that their deeds are honored for generations to come. We appreciate your viewership and your effort to keep Clive Hulme's story and others like his alive in the collective memory. These brave individuals deserve recognition, and with your support, their legacies will continue to resonate long into the future.